Hello everybody, my name is Vitaly Neimer and I'm the Grandmaster in Residence in the St. Louis Chess Club. And welcome to our viewers, both live and online. And today our lesson is going to be the viewer's choice, which we are going to be focusing on analyzing our fans' games. So let's see some of their games today. Okay, so here's the first one. Hopefully I'm pronouncing it correctly, but this is from Georgios Tsirvoulis. And Georgios says, "Greetings from Greece. I'm a huge fan of Yasser, Ben, and the YouTube channel. And I enjoy the live coverages of all the events done by the team. So thank you very much. I play a lot of Blitz games on chess.com, so do we. Low-rated players, of course, so do we. And this game I felt like submitting because the computer analysis gave me a caps of 96 plus tax. All right, and only one inaccuracy in the end, so almost a perfect game for him. I am black in this game. The opponent in the end missed a threat, but I was better anyway. And I think the game is interesting regardless. Would be happy to see if it was featured in your videos. So Georgios, you are lucky because you were the chosen one today. Okay, so George, yeah, so his name is George. All right, so greetings from Greece. By the way, I'm a huge fan of the Greek food. Yummy. Mediterranean food is just amazing. Okay, so let's see. Yes. So let's look at the game. I'm going to flip the board. So George is a fan of the Sicilian defense, as you can see. So he plays c5, and now e6. Oh, very good. So we're transposing kind of to the might transpose to the Khan defense or Paulsen. With e6, I actually played with black as well. A little bit less popular than openings like the Dragon or the Najdorf, but playable, very good move. And now, usually white plays this move, d4. So this is the main line in most of the open Sicilian variations, but instead, white decided to play this move, bishop to e2. So a little bit more passive move, bishop to e2, but still it still allows white to play d4 in the future. Okay, so here George played knight to f6. Good move. We develop our pieces, right? So the second opening principle. Now, just a small comment. I would personally prefer knight going to c6 first, just because it's more natural. So usually, black is developing the b8 knight first because he cannot get attacked. Now, after knight to f6, this knight on f6 can be attacked by this move, e5. Now, it's not the end of the world, of course, because the knight can just jump to d5, and it can transpose to many openings. For example, it can transpose to the Alapin with c3. And for example, if knight c6, then d4, and so on and so on. So yeah, so the knight f6 is a fine move, but it allows e5 at the same time. White decided just to play this move, knight c3. So far, so good. Looks like white is developing his pieces. Not a lot of action on the board. And now, knight c6, very well. And here, white played this move, h3. So what do you guys think about that? Our viewers, our fans at home?
What's it doing?
Exactly. So what does that move do? Usually, the h3 pawn is doing two things. He has two jobs. Number one, we call it a window. So the king won't be mated on the back rank. So it opens up a route for the king to escape. Now in this case, first of all, white didn't have a castle. So that's pretty much premature. The second goal of h3 is sometimes to disallow any pins. For example, this bishop sometimes comes to g4 and pinning the knight. But in our case, really, the bishop cannot come to g4, but also white has a defense already against the pin. So really, the h3 pawn was not so necessary. It doesn't really harm white, but we know that especially in the opening, time is very valuable, right? And so h3 just loses some time. Instead, again, probably a move like d4 or castle would be much more natural. Okay, so white played this move h3. How should black respond? Let's think for a few seconds. Now, just as a reminder, if white would have played d4 and black would capture, and knight would capture on d4, usually in those kind of situations, black can play either d6, a6, queen c7, sometimes even bishop to b4 immediately. But really the goal in chess is realizing the mistake of your opponent and seizing that mistake. So in this game, George, you have seized the moment and you played d5. Very good job, George. The first principle of the opening, controlling the center. If the opponent allows us to do it, then why not? Okay, so pawn takes on e5. Now, George, you took with the knight. I was wondering, you could also take with the pawn as well. Both moves are good. I think that taking with the pawn also allows your bishop to come out. So I would prefer to take with the pawn, but it's a matter of taste in this case. So knight takes d5, castle. Now bishop e7, very good. Bishop to b5, white played. Okay. So it looks like white realized that he put the bishop on not such a good square on e2, a passive square. And now he activates the bishop with bishop to b5. An interesting moment actually in the game. Because at first we see that, okay, so the knight is pinned by the bishop, but he's defended, right? So it's not really a big threat. So usually beginning chess players would immediately castle. This is the most logical move in the position, castle. But white has a hidden threat. He would actually take the knight, although we know that the bishops are slightly better than the knights. And after the pawn takes on b6, white can play rook to e1. And the game becomes very, very positional. So by white giving up his bishop for the knight, he made those weaknesses for black, those double pawns. Now, how should white proceed? For example, if black plays rook b8, just for example. So think about how should white proceed in such positions? Now, the first thing that would come into your mind is probably pawn to d4, right? Just seizing the center. Now, this move is a good move because it is developing your pieces. But you are also allowing your opponent to get rid of his weaknesses. So there will be no more advantage. So usually in such positions, actually white refrains from playing pawn to d4, but he would probably play pawn to d3. And the idea is to put the pawns on white squares. In this case, I will probably have to move the knight first. So because if I play d3 immediately, then the knight can take on c3. But the idea is to get some kind of position like this, and b3. And then put some extra pressure on this pawn on c5. Okay, it's very annoying for black to play kind of position because the bishop on e7 has to keep his defense on c5, and this bishop on c8 is just turned off. So let's go back to the game. So why just play this move, bishop to b5? So how do we defend? Well, George found the most obvious solution, and it's bishop to d7. So good job. Now I understand why he got a good score. So far, so good. Knight takes on d5. Pawn takes. Rook to e1. Castle. And finally, white played to d4. Now the position here is still pretty equal. Symmetrical pawn structure, two bishops and a knight. Black decided to take. And here white took on c6. Now why is that? Why could not white take on d4? Because of a simple combination, right? So always we look for threats, checks, and captures. All the action moves. So let's see. What happens if black takes the knight? Now, if white takes the knight, obviously he's losing a piece. Not so good for us. In this case, white will have to take on d7 and hope that black would retake and queen takes on d4. This position looks pretty good for white because white can now get his attack on the isolated pawn. But we forgot a very important principle, an intermediate move, okay, the interbinzo. So this is the move in between moves. So instead of queen taking on d7, knight can take on c2. Excellent. And after queen takes, then queen takes on d7. In this case, black would stay with the pawn up. So white did the correct choice. He took the knight first. Now the question is with which piece to take the bishop. Think about it at home. Would you take with the bishop or with the pawn? Now in both cases look good. For example, if you take with the bishop, then looks like you activated your bishop. Maybe the queen now is a little bit more active. But the problem is really your bishop is not so active. He's really stuck upon this pawn. And after the knight takes on d4, we are stuck with this isolated pawn. Now we do have two bishops, but we are stuck with the isolated pawn. So, preferably, black should have, Georgios should have taken with the pawn. Because in this case, let's say knight takes d4, now you can actually play even c5 and start pushing the pawns. And if knight f3, bishop f5. Beautiful pair of bishops. So, maybe this was the tax. Maybe this was the inaccurate move. So, Georgios took with the bishop. Knight takes on d4. Bishop going to c5, very well, activating the bishop. and c3. So actually white is playing pretty good up until this point. White chose not to take the knight on c6 because he realized that the knight might impose more danger for black's position. He's attacking the bishop. He can always take the bishop. He can sometimes jump to f5 to create some extra threats on the king side. So in this case, by the way, the best blockading piece is the knight. So c3, black played queen f6, very well, developing the queen. Bishop to e3, okay. Rook f to e8. Queen to g4, excellent. Rook to e8. I'm sorry, rook to e4. Now black, Giorgio played bishop to d6. I would actually prefer just to finish up my development. I like all of my pieces to be developed. That's my #1 rule for my students. Don't attack once before all your pieces are developed. In this case, black does have lots and lots of pressure, especially on the e file. Not so easy for white to play. Now, bishop d6 is probably a good move because it creates a threat. But this threat we call a simple threat. You are just threatening something, and the opponent is going to move away. Instead, you would like to make hidden threats, like rook a to e8. We don't really want to take the bishop on e3, but we know that there is a very powerful pin over here on the e file. So bishop d6. Here, white realized that his position is actually not so good, and decided correctly to try to exchange the queens, right? So when we are under all this pressure and we are being attacked, we would like to transpose to the endgame, hopefully exchanging the queens. And George played correctly. He refused. He played queen to g6. So still a lot of pressure black has. So what to do here with white? What would you do here with white? Here white actually made his big mistake. Not so easy to spot the mistake. It is a mistake. But think about it as the principles I was just telling you about. How the harmony of the pieces. Okay. So what would you do here in this position with white? Now, if you said, let's develop our last piece, which is rook a to d1, you're correct. Yeah? So now we want to put the rook behind the knight. So once the knight jumps, maybe takes the bishop one day, the d5 pawn is going to get attacked. Another way would be trying to create your own battery on the e file. So counter battery. It's going to be two major forces fighting on the e file. But white played knight to f5. Now the idea of knight f5 is actually not so bad because white is again trying to exchange some extra pieces. Like the bishop on d4 and d6. Once the bishop on d6 is going to be exchanged and black and white will put his bishop on d4, then although we have an opposite color bishop position with rooks and queens, although it looks like a draw, but actually white has a lot of advantage. But knight f5 was actually a critical mistake in the game. So try to think in this position, how would you punish white for this move? Okay, so I had a few options. Some people say the rook takes bishop. Some people say d4. Interesting. Interesting ideas. So let's discuss that. So as we know, in chess, we have what we call a thinking process. So number one, what I do after my opponent makes a move like knight to f5 is that I have to ask myself, why did he make this move? What's his threat? Right? Now we already said that he wants to exchange a bishop. So maybe we should move the bishop. Maybe we should ignore that. Right?
Can't move the bishop.
Yeah, that's correct. I cannot move it to c7.
If you move it to c7, he just takes rook with queen, and then if you take back, he forks your king and queen. That's nice.
Very nice. Yeah, so if I move my bishop here, then queen takes, and queen e7.
Oh.
Nice combination.
Ouch.
Maybe I have to move my bishop to f8 and say, okay, we'll let this bishop live another day. But this looks pretty passive, right? So let's go next. The next thinking process is that to ask yourself what has changed in the position. So what has changed in the position? Well, the knight was on d4 and now he's on f5. So it allows us to make this move d4, opening up the bishop, the diagonal, very dangerous diagonal. Now, if we take the bishop first on e3, like it was suggested, and I assume that this also the idea. So let's think about what is the issue in this one.
I think if knight takes rook, it's difficult.
So knight takes rook, and if I still play d4,
Blocked it with
knight to d5, yeah. And if I try to attack the knight even more,
No, you pawn pushed the thing.
exactly. So yeah, so c4, yeah, and looks like white is fine. Just an exchange up. Very good. So it doesn't work, but we had to consider that. It's an action move, right? So chess captures. Next is going to be threats. So d4, and George found this beautiful move. Explores the center. So let's think about what's going on here. Now, if the knight now takes on d6,
Rook takes bishop.
then the rook takes the bishop on e3. Not only the rook is attacking the queen, but also the bishop is attacking the queen, and
Maybe behind it.
exactly there's a mate threat on g2.
Oh, I didn't see that, Lord.
So, in the game, white had to take on d4 with the knight. But even here, we use the same combination. Rook takes on e3. And the queen took on e3. And queen takes on g2.
Oh, he didn't see that. Oh, Lord.
Well, he's on
And
his-
this mate is called the kiss of death. So George from Greece, thank you for the wonderful game, and we hope to see you here at the St. Louis Chess Club, coming to visit us. Okay, dear viewers, right now we have a new game to analyze, which was played by Matt Manley against Ken. And Ken is a very devoted member of our chess club. He comes to all of our classes. So good job. Yeah. That's why I call dedication. Okay, so let's see. So Ken was playing black and Matt was playing white. So let's see. So Matt played knight to f3. Knight to f6. Very, very tricky, this move, knight to f3. White does not reveal his intentions. Really, this position can go into so many openings. It can go to The Sicilian, even if black plays c5, can go to the Reti or the English, can go to the Queen's Gambit. So really, black is the one who is going to choose the opening. So knight f6, and Ken says, you know what? I also don't reveal my plans. So that's the knight dance. Okay. Now g3. Okay, fianchettoing the pawn. Great. So what is the best response here for black?
Doing the same.
You can do the same thing, g6, yeah, that's a good move.
Before the knight goes out of the way, so you can.
Yeah, so g6 is a fine move, just transposing to something symmetrical. Don't know what yet, but something symmetrical. You can play d6, yeah. I think that black should probably control the center. There are two moves. There's c5, mostly for the Sicilian players. They like to play c5 in such positions. But Ken chose this principal move, d5. Very good, Ken. You probably watched my other videos about the opening principles. Very good. Bishop to g2. And now you played knight to c6.
Because that way I can hopefully get e5 in.
Oh, okay. Now knight c6 looks like a logical move, right? It's looks like a kind of the four knights, right? If white takes out his other knights with d4 on the board, looks like a very logical move to take out the knight on c6 and then playing e5. But we have a but. Our other viewers say that actually white can play now d4, and this is what happened in the game. Now in this position, it is very strange, but we transpose to the kind of the Catalan Queen's Gambit. It's very strange that the knight on c6 is misplaced.
Yeah.
Although it's in the center, it's developed. But in the end, white is going to play c4 at some point, and we don't have the support of the pawn on c6. Very, very strange phenomenon. But yeah, so how should we play here? Not knight c6.
c5.
Yeah, so here there is basically a few moves, a few options. There is c5, and for example castle, and now knight e6. That's a complete different story. And actually here you can transpose to the reversed Grunfeld. So if white plays d4, you take, knight takes, and e5, knight takes e6, pawn takes e6, and we got the reverse Grunfeld. White is playing black and black is playing white. Not such a bad position for black, right? I mean, we have the center, although you have to know a little bit about the ideas on how to play against c4 and stuff like that. So this is option number one. Option number two, I actually had a game against a teammate of mine, Justus Williams, and I played, I think I just played g6. So we just went to the symmetrical position, and because it's symmetrical, it ended in a draw. Friendship won. So let's look at what happened. So knight c6, not the end of the world though, not the end of the world. d4, bishop to g4.
I waste Tempe here. He could have punished me better, but he didn't.
So bishop g4 looks like we are developing the bishop, but white can play
knight to e5.
That's correct. Knight to e5 would be a very strong move.
Yeah, he didn't, so I got lucky there.
Because we cannot take the knight. Pawn takes knight. Now we have some very, very big issues with this pawn on d5. So suddenly bishop to g4 does not work. so well. Now, white did not play knight d5, so how should we have been played instead with black? Well, again, similar. We can either fianchetto this bishop from g6. We can play, just continue and play e6. Or maybe take out the bishop to f5. And let's say, example, castle, then e6. Doesn't look so bad. At some point, we will have to move the knight to release the c pawn. Bishop g4. White decided to castle first. That's fine. Ooh. Now, can you play queen to d7? I think that you probably watched too many of my videos about tactics and mating attacks. But I like your passion. I like the fact that you want to mate him immediately. A very interesting idea. Unfortunately, here, especially in this position, white can play knight to e5. That's even a stronger fork.
Yep.
And again, if you take, then we're losing the d5 pawn.
But he didn't do it again.
Because if knight e4, then f3. But again, he did not do it. Okay. So he's a very principled player. And here he played c4. Okay. So what is the idea of c4? The idea of c4 is that white wants to give up a pawn. He's sacrificing a pawn to get a better grip in the center. So what if we would take the pawn? I'm wondering. Maybe we should take the pawn. I like this move because A, I'm winning a pawn, and B, d5 was a huge headache for me. So now, if he plays knight e5, at least it's not such a big headache. I still have a headache, but if knight e5 now, I can take the queen, and I cannot take here. Knight d7, bishop takes. Still cannot take here because book d2. Not sure what to put the rook, b8 or d8. Still a tough position. Still a tough position. Rook b8.
Yeah.
And bishop c6. Rook b6. Bishop a4. Yeah, the question is how do I take this one out? Maybe g6? Yeah, maybe g6. Still, I don't like so much the pawn structure, but at least we are alive and kicking. So after c4, Ken, you went all in. Bishop h3.
I figured I had to. I was really steppy.
Yeah, I like your determination. You're playing. You don't care. You say I don't care what you're playing, but I'm gonna mate you. I'm sticking to my plan. Okay, well, let's see if it worked. Oh, now white played knight to a3. Wow. What is this? So knight c3 would be probably much preferable. So knight a3. Okay, bishop takes g2, king takes g2, and he played e6. Okay, yeah, finally, looks not so bad actually right now, not so bad. I was wondering if you had some thoughts about trying to mate him on the king side. So it's very fashionable nowadays if you look at the World Cup and the Sinquefield Cup. Those moves a5 and h5, like Aronian played.
Yeah, Aronian is crazy.
Yeah, and now the h4 is coming. Some weakening the king. Maybe even g5. So that might be interesting. And if you take my pawn now, I'm not afraid of taking it with the queen, because you don't have the knight here anymore. The knight is out of the game. So h5 can, just for you, I'm going to make a video about h5 and a5.
Thank you.
Okay, so e6, bishop f4, and now a6.
Yeah, I want to keep that knight off of b5 as he attacks the c pawn.
Like one of my coaches used to say, we are afraid of ghosts. Let's calculate this. First of all, let's say we're just going to continue with our development. Just bishop e7. Now, yes, white can play knight to b5 and attack our pawn on c7. But in this case, we have a very simple defense. Rook c8. Right? Now, it won't allow you to castle long and checkmate him. So that probably was the reason why I didn't play that.
Right.
But, you know, we have to be flexible with our plans. You still can mate him. We just have to, it's just going to take longer.
I see a lot of ghosts.
And the idea is that next move, a6 is coming.
And he just gets booted.
Yeah, you just boot the knight. Give him the boot. So, now, by the way, the problem with a6 is that it shatters all our dreams of long castle. When we have such a structure with the pawns like this, in one line, it's the perfect structure because there are no weaknesses. Right? But when we make one move, a6 or b6 or c6, usually a6 is the best one. It creates what we call a hook. Okay. Now white will have a target for attack. For example, maybe b4, b5. Right. So there will be no long castle probably. And white played c5. Very good move. I like this move for white because disallowing the exchange, blocking off your bishop, gaining space, not allowing you to take the knight. Bishop e7 you played. Knight c2. White realized that finally that his knight is in a bad spot and you castled short. And white played a4. Yeah. So the idea is to play b4 and b5. Well, let's see what Ken did. Ken went for the bishop. Knight to h5. Now, sometimes those moves are good, but they are usually good when you actually get the bishop.
Right.
So, for example, if white would have played e3,
Right.
in this case, I would say that knight h5 is justified. But in case of a4, what happened in the game is that after knight h5, white made the correct decision to move his bishop back. Rook f to e8.
I wanted to get e5 in.
Yeah, I think it's the correct idea. Usually, a rule of thumb, when your opponent attacks you on the flanks, you want to strive to explode the position in the center. So I like the idea of playing e5. Not sure if I would start with this move, but yeah, definitely it looks not so bad. Rook f to e8, b4, bishop to f8. Yeah, you have to move the bishop here because if you move it here, then g4 coming, right?
Right.
He played e3. Okay, so e3 is a very tricky move, right? You guys see that? Because now we cannot play e5. Actually, can we play e5? So if it takes to the pawn, knight takes, but attacking our knight, the queen is attacking our knight. But now the rook can take. But f4, yes. And g4, yeah. Or knight d4, yeah. Okay. Ken used his unbelievable instincts and did not play e5. Good sense of danger, just like Spider-Man. So you played knight f6. Good, getting the knight back into the game. So in the end, it wasn't such a bad maneuver because his bishop is more passive on d2. But I'm afraid that his pawn storm is going to be very, very fast and deadly. Queen e2. Ooh. Okay, so the idea is that white wants to connect the rooks. I like that for white, but putting the queen in front of the rook, not a good idea. And Ken, what happened? You played knight e4. What about our plan? Remember our dreams? No. Freedom. What's happened with e5? Wait, it doesn't work because of b5? Let's see. We have to. Well, if it takes, then our position is pretty good. I like black now. Not so bad, right? The only thing for us to calculate is what if he counterattacks with b5. Yes, exactly. Now let's see if it takes. Who needs to take here? I like pawn structure, so I guess I will take with the queen. Maybe with the pawn is fine as well. Oh, maybe actually with the pawn is fine as well. And then next move is going to be knight e4. Now I like this position because what happened is that we got rid of the knights, right? So which is good for us because they cannot attack you with b5. But also our rook is much more developed. So really, I thought that was your chance.
It was.
Maybe he won't even play b5. Maybe we'll just exchange everything. And in this case, wow, putting the rooks into play. Sometimes d4 is coming. So Ken, I like your plans. The mating plans, the e5 plans, the freedom plans. But you have to stick to them.
Yeah, I kicked it.
Yeah, don't change your plans. It's like with investments, you know. You have to just pick a stock, just leave it right there. Don't go out. Okay, so bishop f8. Let's see, queen, knight e4. You played. Technically, it's still a good move. But now you played b5. Knight e7. The knight went back. But now you gave up the e5 square, yeah. So knight e5. Okay, so now we have some problems. Yeah, now I feel squeezed, like a can of tuna. And now he played also f3. Now this is interesting because after f3 it looks like a good move, but it took the bishop. Sometimes I would maybe try to play bishop to e1 first, and then f3 to squeeze you more. Okay, the less space you have, but the more pieces you have, you have less and less space. So I would play bishop d1. So f3, got the right decision, and now f6. Okay, so not all is lost. Knight to d3. Oh, and now you took on b5. This I don't really like so much because I think that the a file is going to be used by white, right, more than black. So therefore, that's why I thought I like the fact that you kept the pawns over there. Maybe he's going to make a mistake and play b6. Right. Maybe it's going to be your lucky man, yes, lucky day. But so what to do instead of taking on b5?
Maybe knight to G6 to push E5 again?
Yes. Ken is following his dreams. Knight G6 and E5. Yeah, I think the position will be actually not so bad for you. Not so bad. Yeah, so this really gave a counterplay for white. Queen D7, Queen B4, Knight G6. Okay, so he spotted our plans and played F4. Now I played B6. I think that B6 is it's kind of a controversial move. I'm not sure about this. Yeah, we put the pawn.
It gives him C6 with the
Yeah, it gives him C6, but it also puts our pawns on dark squares. I'm not sure if I would. What is the idea? What about E5? Why not E5? No, this was our whole plan. Is it taking? No, maybe F5? Maybe F5. Yeah, not so bad, because after the knight moves, you are taking on E3. Right? Yes. So E5. Free Willy. That's when he jumps over and goes to the C. Okay, E3, knight B6 was played. C6, okay. Queen D8. So if we take the queen, he takes on D7, and everything is hanging. That's not good. So C6 was a very strong move. Yeah. So Queen D8. Would you play Queen F7 instead? Keeping
one of the computer moves, yeah.
Yeah, so basically I just want to keep my rooks connected to each other. If he takes, I get the file with the queen. Because if I went like you did in the game with the queen to D8, then I assume he took. No, he actually didn't. He played queen to. He has to go with the queen back first. Yeah, but now he wants to take your rook and put the other rook on A1. Right. So you had to take. Finally, it happened. E5. It's a miracle. But I'm kind of afraid because now some hunters came to this diagonal.
Yes.
So you freed Willy, but the hunters are after him. Okay, so E5, knight to B4. Which knight?
It was that one, yeah.
C. Okay, I assume it's C because it's more behind. Let's see if it works. E takes D4. Knight takes D5. Okay, now you have to get your king away because he wants to checkmate you in 2 moves.
Right.
Rook A7. Ooh, gets spicy over here. D takes E3. Rook takes C7.
Right.
Now I played Queen A8.
Yes. I had stupid visions of pushing that pawn to E2 and getting my queen on A1 and mating him.
Well, it's actually not so stupid, but why not to do it immediately? E1.
Oh.
A2.
Yeah.
As we say, charge. Right? I think yeah. So this is just a competition. Who's gonna? It's a race. But Queen A8 really gave him the edge.
Yeah.
Ooh, because now he found a strong move.
Yes, he did.
Let's see if anybody can see that. Actually, not sure that it's winning. Let's see. So knight takes F6 was played.
Threatening smothered mate. Right?
Threatening a mate. Now you did not take the knight. But what if you take the knight? I assume Queen F7, right?
Right.
But, I mean, that's defendable. Yeah, bishop e7. Now, we are still not out of danger because I think maybe he can... Well, if he sacrifices, that's okay, but maybe he can play f5. The position looks tough. It's very tough. Okay, that's it, the end of the game. You played bishop e7. You believed him that the knight is poisoned.
Right.
Bishop e7. But now he just took here. Yeah, unfortunately, without the rook on without the support of the rook on e8, this pawn on e3 becomes useless almost. Queen e6. Wow, very strong move. I like that. I like that. It paralyzes black. Queen f8. Yeah, because you can't play queen d8 because of rook d7. Rook c8 and c7, and white won.
Down goes Fraser.
Well, not such a bad move. Not just a bad game, Ken. So very good. I like the fact that you finally pushed e5. So you did have some chances. You just had really to move even further. Don't just stop at e5, e3.
Right.
Keep moving,
Keep
e2,
moving, and then move the queen over.
and so on. Yeah. All right. Good job. Good job. Thank you.
Thank you for going over.